Have you ever noticed how some women can walk into a room without saying a single word, and yet every eye finds them? It's not because they are the most beautiful. It's not because they are the loudest. It's because something about them speaks to a deeper place in the human mind, a place beyond logic, beyond charm, beyond anything that can be learned from a magazine or a dating guide. This is the space of frequency, and whether we are aware of it or not, we are all transmitting, all the time. Carl Jung believed that what truly connects two people isn't what they consciously say or do, but the silent agreements that form between their unconscious selves. These are the unspoken contracts, the invisible threads, woven from patterns, wounds, and long-forgotten stories we carry inside. Men are not addicted to your best, most polished version. They are drawn to what feels familiar to them on an emotional frequency level. And here lies the paradox. Many women try to attract by doing more, by proving more, by giving more. But magnetism has very little to do with action. It lives in presence, in inner resonance, in emotional clarity. Joe Dispenza's research into the human electromagnetic field tells us something profound. Every thought we have sends a signal, but it is our feelings, the emotional energy we embody, that draw a match. This is why you can think, I want love, I want connection, and yet continue to attract men who cannot truly meet you. Because attraction is not about what you wish for. It's about what you are, in your quietest, most unguarded moments. You don't attract what you want. You attract who you are when no one is watching. Unresolved patterns alter your frequency like static in a radio signal. Old wounds, unspoken fears, stories you've carried since childhood, they all shape the energy you radiate. And when that signal is cloudy, it can pull in the very things you say you no longer want. But when a woman vibrates in wholeness, when she stands in the calm, unshaken center of herself, she becomes like a tuning fork. Whatever is out of tune around her will either shift to meet her frequency or quietly fade away. She doesn't have to force. She doesn't have to chase. She simply stands in her own resonance, and the world reorganizes around her. This is why the most magnetic women are not always the most outwardly impressive. Their power is subtle. It's the way they carry stillness in a noisy room. It's the way their nervous system feels safe, even when life is uncertain. It's the way they seem to listen not only with their ears but with their whole body. These women do not perform for attention. They do not scramble to prove their worth. Their presence alone is the proof. And this is where our journey begins. Because there are 3 daily habits, simple, repeatable, deeply transformative, that can rewire the way your unconscious self moves in the world. 3 habits that don't just change the way men respond to you, they change the way you respond to yourself. And when that shift happens, magnetism becomes effortless. It stops being about seduction and starts being about coherence, the kind of coherence that both Carl Jung and modern neuroscience recognize as the key to authentic connection. A woman in coherence doesn't try to be irresistible. She simply is. Not because she's mastered a performance, but because she has returned to her original frequency, the one she knew before the world told her who to be. And when she lives there, she doesn't just attract. She transforms the space she enters. This is the unseen frequency men can't resist, and it begins with the smallest, quietest changes inside you. The women who carry true magnetism don't grip the attention of a man with a constant stream of charm or drama. They don't rely on dazzling him with high emotional energy, and they don't ride the waves of constant performance. Their pull is different, quieter, more grounded. It's the stillness within them that unsettles the men who are used to controlling the game. When your nervous system is at peace, when you carry no frantic edge, you become unpredictable to men who rely on emotional volatility to keep their sense of control. And this unpredictability is not born from manipulation. It comes from a deep, embodied sense of self-containment. We are often told that attraction thrives on excitement, but men do not become addicted to endless stimulation. What creates long-term fixation is the mystery within stillness. It is the sense that no matter what happens, you will not be pulled from your center. This is the quality that makes a man lean in, try to understand you, want to experience more of you, because your essence is not immediately available for him to consume. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious self speaks through patterns more than through words. A woman grounded in emotional neutrality sends a signal, "I am whole, and I will not bend myself to fit into your story." This interrupts the familiar chase-reward cycle that emotionally immature men often live by. They expect highs and lows, chaos and reconciliation, push and pull. When they meet stillness instead, something within them shifts. From a neurological perspective, the male brain reacts to unpredictability with increased dopamine, the chemical tied to desire and fixation. But here's the nuance. This effect only works when the unpredictability is wrapped in calm. If he senses emotional chaos, his instinct will be to guard himself, not to move closer. Emotional neutrality is the quiet paradox, the balance between being emotionally alive and yet unshaken. This neutrality is not the same as emotional coldness. It's not about cutting yourself off from feeling. Instead, it's about mastering your emotional recovery time. The faster you can return to your inner stillness after a trigger, the stronger your field of influence becomes. Because power is not in never being moved, it's in always finding your way back to your center. Imagine a calm lake on a still morning. It mirrors everything around it perfectly. Now imagine the chaos of a storm-tossed ocean. Nothing can be clearly reflected in it. Your emotional state works the same way. The calmer and more grounded you are, the more accurately you reflect the truth of others, and the more magnetic your presence becomes. And here's the truth. When you live in emotional neutrality, you stop playing by the unspoken rules of emotional dependency. You no longer need to react to every signal he sends. You no longer let your energy rise and fall in response to his presence or absence. Instead, you remain steady, and in that steadiness you hold the power. This is why the invisible habit is not about pretending to be detached. It's about building an inner landscape so stable that nothing, no man, no text message, no momentary high or low, can shake it for long. You become, in a sense, your own anchor, and that anchor makes you both mysterious and unforgettable. Because once you live here, every other habit becomes easier to embody, and the next one, the subtle act of self-validation in micro moments, grows naturally out of this stillness. For it's in emotional neutrality that you finally stop waiting for anyone else to tell you who you are. Once you begin to live in the calmness of emotional neutrality, something unexpected happens. You start to notice the tiny moments when you've been quietly outsourcing your worth. They are easy to miss. They slip in like whispers, checking your phone to see if he texted back before you decide how your day will feel, glancing at his reaction to measure if what you said was good enough, waiting for his approval before feeling secure. These moments are small, but they are not insignificant. They are the cracks in your energetic foundation. Carl Jung described the anima, the feminine essence in the male psyche, as a force that can either seduce or awaken. The same is true for your own inner anima. When she is self-fed, nourished by your own recognition, she becomes radiant in a way no one can diminish. But when she waits to be fed from the outside, she is always at the mercy of someone else's gaze. Think of a woman who waits for a good morning text to feel wanted. To the outside world, it seems harmless, almost romantic. But in the language of the brain, it's a moment of outsourcing dopamine regulation. It's saying, "I will feel good only if you give me a reason." And the more often this pattern runs, the more your emotional state becomes tied to his behavior instead of your own inner truth. The subtle habit is this: each time you feel the impulse to seek confirmation from him, pause just a breath, and in that pause offer yourself the recognition you're about to look for, quietly, privately, without turning it into a performance. After every authentic interaction, remind yourself of who you are before checking how he might be responding to you. This small redirection rewires your brain. It slowly dissolves the old loop of chasing external validation and replaces it with an inner circuit of self-recognition. Your mind needs coherence. It needs your inner self to match your outer expression. When your actions are followed by your own inner applause, instead of waiting for someone else to decide their value, you create stability in your emotional field. And men feel this. They may not know why they are drawn closer, but they sense the difference. A woman who validates herself does not feel like a question mark. She feels like an answer. There is a story of a woman who began a 30-day ritual she called her inner applause. Each time she expressed herself authentically, whether it was saying no to an invitation, wearing what she truly loved, or speaking a vulnerable truth, she would close her eyes for a moment afterward and celebrate herself in silence. At first, it felt strange, almost unnecessary, but slowly something inside her shifted. Her interactions with men became easier, lighter, more magnetic. She had not changed her appearance, her social habits, or her dating strategies. The only thing she'd changed was the source of her validation. This is the quiet alchemy. When you give yourself what you used to beg for, you no longer send out the silent signal of need. Instead, you broadcast the frequency of fulfillment. And in that frequency, your relationships change. Not because you force them to, but because you are no longer standing on unstable ground. From here, another transformation begins to emerge. When you are both grounded in emotional neutrality and rooted in self-validation, you find you no longer need to explain yourself endlessly. You no longer try to fill every silence with words, just to feel understood. This leads to the next habit, one that turns your presence into your language and your silence into your power. By the time you are anchored in emotional neutrality and have begun to feed your own worth in micro-moments, you realize something else. You no longer feel the compulsion to constantly explain yourself, the need to be understood, to justify, to fill the space with words, begins to loosen its grip. And what replaces it is not distance, but a deeper kind of intimacy, one that doesn't demand proof. In our modern world, many of us have become addicted to over-explaining and oversharing. We rush to clarify our feelings before they can be misunderstood, to defend our choices before they can be questioned. It feels like connection, but it's often an energy leak. Because true intimacy doesn't always grow from information. It grows from resonance when resonance needs space to breathe. Carl Jung spoke of the feminine shadow as often hiding in the need to be understood. That shadow whispers, "If they don't understand me, I'll be unloved." And so we speak and speak and speak, until the mystery that makes us magnetic is stripped bare. The individuated feminine, the woman who knows herself, no longer chases understanding. She allows mystery to live between herself and the world, not as a manipulation, but as a form of respect for her own depths. From a neurobiological perspective, silence in the right moments has a surprising effect. When paired with grounded eye contact and an open, calm posture, it can actually increase oxytocin in men. It invites them into a more primal, intuitive connection. And here's the key. In that silence, they begin to project. They begin to fill in the spaces you leave open with their own curiosity, their own imagination. And projection, as Jung knew well, is one of the most powerful forces of attraction. The practice here is deceptively simple. Replace your reactive talking with 3 seconds of sensing. When a question is asked, or a moment opens, don't rush to fill it. Let the silence stretch just enough for you to feel your own body, your own presence, before you respond. In those 3 seconds, you aren't withdrawing. You're letting the moment deepen. You are telling the other person without words, "I am here, but I am not rushing to be consumed." It's like a candle in a dark room. A candle doesn't shout to prove it is burning. It doesn't plead to be noticed, it simply glows. And because it glows steadily, without trying to be anything else, the room changes around it. Your presence works the same way. When you no longer try to explain your power begins to speak for you. This isn't about becoming silent in a way that shuts people out. It's about choosing your words as if they were precious stones, placed with care, rather than scattered without thought. It's about letting your energy arrive before your sentences do. And when you live this way, you begin to see how much of attraction is not built on what you say, but on the feeling you create in the spaces between your words. And once you have mastered this, the stillness, the self-validation, and the mystery, there is another layer to uncover. It's the quiet undoing of the pedestal you may have placed men on without even realizing it. Because until you bring them down to eye level, your energy will always tilt toward imbalance, and that is where the next transformation begins. Once your presence has learned to speak more than your words ever could, you begin to notice something else, How certain men have, without your conscious intention, been placed on pedestals in your mind. It can happen subtly, even to the most self-aware woman. He may possess a quality you deeply admire, a way of looking at you that awakens a forgotten desire, or a certain charisma that feels rare. And before you realize it, your energy has begun to lean upward toward him instead of standing rooted in your own center. The danger of the pedestal is quiet but powerful. When someone is placed above you, it is not only your view of them that changes, it's your view of yourself. A pedestal creates distance. It tilts the balance so that you are looking up, and he is looking down, even if unconsciously. And the truth is, the moment you give someone that elevated position, you've already surrendered part of your sovereignty. Carl Jung spoke of projection as a mirror that shows us not who the other person truly is, but what part of ourselves we've disowned. When you idolize a man, you are often not seeing him clearly at all. You are seeing the unmet need he seems to represent. Perhaps it's the need to feel chosen, to feel admired, to feel safe, but it's your longing that is wearing his face. The work here is not to strip away your admiration, but to retrieve your projection, to take back the piece of yourself that you've unknowingly placed in his hands. This retrieval begins in the exact moment you feel awe or infatuation rise. Pause. Breathe. Ask yourself gently, is this really about him, or is it about the way I want to feel through him? That simple question starts to pull the thread of projection back toward your own center. Greg Braden speaks of emotional coherence, the alignment between heart, mind, and body. When you are coherent, your field radiates strength that does not lean toward anyone else for completion. But the pedestal destroys coherence because it implies that something essential is above you, out of reach, belonging to someone else. The antidote is to dissolve the illusion by remembering nothing he gives you is foreign to you. It only feels rare because you have forgotten its source yourself. There's a story of a woman who had spent years drawn to a man who seemed to carry every quality she had dreamed of. She admired his intelligence, his confidence, the way he walked into a room as if the air itself moved to greet him. She believed she was drawn to him because of who he was, but in truth, she was drawn to the way she felt in his presence. Alive, noticed, significant. The day she realized that she could generate those feelings without him was the day his power dissolved. He didn't become less, but he no longer stood above her. And when you take men off pedestals, something extraordinary happens. The distance disappears. You meet eye to eye, energy to energy, without leaning or reaching. The connection becomes one of equals, and equality in attraction is not neutrality. It is fire without imbalance. Once you've reclaimed what you've placed outside yourself, you can finally step into the final transformation, becoming the living embodiment of what you once chased. When you are no longer seeking it, you begin to radiate it, and that is where your magnetism shifts from instinct to mastery. When the pedestal is gone and the projection is retrieved, you stand on steady ground again, and from that ground, something profound becomes possible. You can become the very energy you once searched for in others. This is where attraction moves beyond technique or circumstance. It becomes resonance, and resonance is not about chasing, convincing, or proving. It is about being. Carl Jung understood that we do not attract from our conscious desires alone, but from the frequency we carry in the deepest layers of our psyche. The unconscious self calls forward what matches it, and if for years you have sought safety, admiration, or love from outside of yourself, your frequency has been tuned to longing. But when you decide to embody the quality you seek, you shift your signal entirely. This is where energy psychology meets the art of living. The law of resonance says, what you are internally coherent with will naturally flow toward you. Not because you are forcing it, but because like recognizes like. If you have always chased the feeling of being cherished, the shift comes when you choose to cherish yourself first, fully, consistently. If you have longed to be seen, begin every day by seeing yourself, not as an idea, but as a living presence. One woman I knew carried a deep desire to be told she was beautiful. For years she sought men who might say it, thinking it would complete her. But every compliment, no matter how sincere, dissolved too quickly. It could not stay because it had no roots inside her. The turning point came when she began a morning ritual, standing in front of a mirror, meeting her own gaze and softly speaking the very words she longed to hear. At first it felt strange, even hollow, but over time something changed. Her body began to believe her. Her nervous system no longer ached for external proof. And soon, without trying, people began to reflect her self-recognition back to her. Not because she asked for it, but because it radiated from her. The brain does not distinguish between an external source of affirmation and an internal one. It only registers the signal. This means you can feed your own field the energy you've been starving for, and in doing so, you become the source. You stop approaching the world as a seeker and begin walking as the keeper of your own flame. Think of a flame in the night. It doesn't chase the moths, it doesn't run toward what it wants to attract, it simply burns, steadily, warmly. Inevitably, what is drawn to its light will come. The same is true for you when you embody the energy you once begged from the outside. And this embodiment does not only change how others respond to you, it changes how you move through the world. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop bending to fit into places that do not honor you. You stop fearing solitude because you are no longer empty inside it. Instead, you begin to experience the quiet, steady pull of true magnetism. Not the magnetism of performance, but of coherence. From here we arrive at the final truth. This is not about keeping men, or even attracting them. It is about becoming so rooted in your own frequency that whatever enters your life is naturally aligned, and whatever is not simply falls away. This is the new feminine alchemy, where magnetism matures into sovereignty. The journey you have traveled in this unfolding story is not a mere set of habits or clever tactics. It is a gradual return, a quiet reclamation of a frequency that has always been yours, even when the world taught you to chase and prove it otherwise. True attraction, as Carl Jung hinted, is not about becoming lovable in the eyes of others, but about embracing the parts of yourself that once felt unworthy, unseen, or fragmented. It is about integration, about meeting your shadow with tenderness and without fear. This alchemy of presence and coherence is the new feminine power, one that does not shout for attention, but commands respect simply by existing. Neville Goddard reminds us that we must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. But this is not a shallow act of pretending. It is an identity shift, a profound alignment where feeling loved is no longer conditional on external proof, but flows as an inner truth. To feel loved is to be love itself. The habits you have explored, emotional neutrality, self-validation, speaking less and sensing more, depedestalizing and embodying your own resonance, are not tricks. They are gentle, powerful remembrances of who you really are beneath the noise and the patterns. They invite you back to your original frequency, to a place of quiet sovereignty, where you no longer need to run after what you deserve. Imagine a woman who moves through life like a gravitational field. She does not stretch or strain to reach what she desires. Instead, she draws it in, quietly, steadily, unshakably. This woman is not outside of you. She is the core of your becoming. And as this magnetic presence takes form, the men who stay are not addicted to your appearance, your words, or your actions. They are drawn to the feeling you evoke, a feeling of safety, mystery, wholeness, and calm that no longer depends on them but exists fully within you. This is a radical shift from seeking love to becoming love, from chasing validation to being sovereign. So perhaps the deepest question that remains is this: if the energy you have always sought in others is already within you, who might you become when you stop asking and start embodying? And if what you thought you needed to find outside is waiting to greet you inside, how would that change the way you walk through the world? This is your invitation to dwell in that space, to linger in the silence where your true power hums. To honor your journey as a sacred unfolding, not a race to somewhere else. To become finally the woman who does not just attract, but who magnetizes from the fullness of her being. You are not broken. You are blooming in silence. And with this, the dance of magnetism and maturity becomes your new story.